Mini episode 1719 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge Mini Episode 1719. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris coming at you, and we have with us today two of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries, and we have a very special occasion to get to because this is our 7th Don Koster tribute, which we always couple with our 2024 MLB preview. And, of course, Don Koster and myself, sidekicks back in the day on Life's a Pitch with Ken Detwiler on the late lamented Sports Talk Network. And so Ken and I do this segment every year, and we do it with the guy who has always been the third man in the booth with us in doing our baseball previews, Steve Kallas. So just to kind of keep it as a three-man booth for doing this like we did when Don was around, and unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but this is our way of trying to keep, at the very least, his broadcasting alive, is by starting the show by doing a tribute to him. So, again, Ken Detwiler, Steve Kallas, two of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries. Of course, Steve Kallas of the Kallas Remarks podcast. You can check that out anywhere you get your podcasts with Steve Kallas and Joe Stazak. So, Ken, great to have you in for this, and I know every year we always love talking about Don and paying tribute to him.
Yeah, and it's always good memories of when we were all together doing the show, and I really, really enjoy Steve participating in this, by the way, too.
Yes.
He has a certain Eastern type of flair to himself, as they say.
Well, yeah.
Us Midwesterners. So,
but I agree with that, and that's, you know, not to be redundant, I've said this before, but this is a thing where if we knew Steve back in the day, and we'd featured him on there because we had a lot of eclectic guests back in the day, I've always said this is a guy where we would have hung up and gone to commercial where Don would have been like, I like this guy. So I'm very convinced that would have been his reaction. So I'm sure Don from the great beyond is glad to have you in for this tribute every year as we are, Steve Kallas. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I appreciate that a lot, Rick, and it's great to be with you and Ken. In baseball, always probably my favorite trio because you know I'm a baseball guy. And as for Don, sorry I never met him. There's no way I could fill his shoes, but I'm happy to sit in as the third guy in this trio.
Oh, yeah. This is our best way of paying tribute to him, by starting off saying a few words about him and then kind of segueing into what he loved doing the best, which was talking baseball in front of a microphone. And so as far as how that goes, Ken, I mean, every year we always talk about him, you know, in the sense of, you know, how entertaining he was. He had that kind of that kind of gruffness that you just couldn't coach out of somebody, like a real natural, as far as somebody could come in and have sharp takes and be entertaining and make you laugh. And like, I remember back in the day, like a lot of the younger kids at the Sports Talk Network, just and any of the times that they heard him talking, they were just always laughing, like, this guy is so entertaining, so naturally entertaining. And I always try to think every year, you know, as things are going on, gee, what would Don be saying about this or about that? And again, as I said to you guys off air, right on cue, Major League Baseball serves us up with the Ohtani deal here. So, you know, that's one of those ones where it just, I don't know what Don would be saying about Ohtani and the gambling and whatever and all of that and the absurdity of this. I saw a meme the other day that somebody had tweeted out about for further comment on how something like this could have happened, let's go to our Bet ESPN desk, Jeff Passan here with the FanDuel update, you know. So, of course, we know how it got to this because that kind of stuff is taking over the world. And it's one of those things where it makes me miss Don even more because Don was here in the before of all of this. And I don't know if he ever could have even imagined it getting to where it's at now. And I say that in a sad way as far as the way that everything is really kind of degenerated with the way that gambling has taken over. But while I don't know what his thoughts would have been, Ken, they would have been sharp and entertaining. I'll tell you that.
I would have thought when I was thinking about the show with you two guys tonight, I was thinking Don would probably say, just about us doing this show in his name, what are you Appleheads doing? It's been 7 years. Okay,
yeah.
Let's move on. And I would say, oh, okay. And then, that was Don. He was just to the point, and let's start talking. So, but yeah, and Ohtani's a perfect lead-in. So.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, like again, it's so foreign because it's one of those things where again, I sort of started us off a couple of years ago. It would have been 2020. On the same kind of a note on like COVID. And I was just like, I can't even imagine what Don would have said about that. But again, it would have been entertaining and it would have been really sharp. And there are certain things where you would know what his point of view would be, but then these are the things where it just makes it even sadder because it's like, oh God, that really makes it seem like it's been such a long period of time. Like these things have happened that were unforeseen, and Don was with us as recently as 2017. But the world has changed a lot since 2017. Oh. So this is just another one of those things. You had daily gambling or daily fantasy, Freudian slip on my part, right? Daily gambling. Daily fantasy, that was the camel's nose under the tent for all of this stuff. And I'd always said, fantasy and gambling were like first cousins, but, daily fantasy and gambling are basically twin brothers. So it was kind of inevitable. Once you had that going on, because it's the purest form of gambling in many ways. Anything with daily fantasy and anything like that, and it was a straight line to where we are now. And that's one of those things where, Steve, it's hard to imagine what somebody who was most recently on this earth in 2017 would make of something like this, because you might have known eventually that baseball and the other sports were going to go this way. But, again, I'll tie it back to the pandemic before. All of the greed that's involved in terms of the lost money with the pandemic and everything else like that. And to a certain extent, some of the rights fees going down with the collapse of the regional sports network bubble. So it might have been foreseeable, Steve, back in 2017 that it was going to go this way. At some point, but I don't know that we would have thought it would have gone this way by 2024, absent the circumstances I just mentioned.
Well, I think if Don showed up today but hadn't known what had happened for 7 years, and you said to him, well, the Dodgers signed 2 guys for more than $1 billion with a B dollars, I think he would have said, okay, it's really what they're making, please. True. But
yeah, that would have to be censored probably.
I think the Ohtani thing raises a lot of questions, and the biggest question I have is because, correct me if I'm wrong, fellas, but I thought the interpreter first came out and said, yeah, I got a lot of gambling debts, and Shohei helped me pay them, as if he knew what was. And that story immediately changed to the following. Not only did he not know, and look, $4.5 million, I don't know over how many years that is, but doesn't he have an accountant who's going to see $4.5 million no matter what Ohtani was making? And he was making stupid money then, and he's just making stupider money now, and good for him. But I think there's big problems. Notice what the guy said, fellas. He said, oh, and I never bet on baseball. I only bet on other sports because you know what the hook is here. If Ohtani did know, heaven forbid if he bet, if it's baseball, full 21, you bet on a game you're not involved in, that's 1 year suspension. If you bet a game that you are involved with, and oh, by the way, my pet peeve, whether you Pete Rose and you bet to win or you're anybody else who bet to lose, you're banned for life. Now, what are they going to do with this guy if there's an inkling? So what did the interpreter come out and say afterwards? Whoa, Ohtani knew nothing about it. I bet all the games. I didn't know betting was illegal in California. Give me a break. You bet $4.5 million with a bookie, and you don't know that sports betting is illegal in California. And, oh, by the way, nothing about baseball. I had no baseball because that's I don't want to call it the holy grail, but that's the thing that can really get Ohtani into trouble. And then Ohtani comes out and goes, I was shocked. It's like Casablanca, man. I was shocked to find I was losing all that money. Well, that's not what the guy said originally. And somebody got to him quickly and said, what, are you out of your mind? And maybe they paid him something or whatever. But I think there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, because I just find it hard to believe. You have agents, you have lawyers, you have accountants. $4.5 million disappeared over I don't know how long, and nobody saw it. Nobody knew about it. Now, if Ohtani knew about it and said, hey, fellas, it's okay. I'm Charles Barkley. I can afford to lose $4 million, even if it's my buddy Barkley. I lost $400,000 one day. So what? I can afford it.
Right.
So I just don't know. We don't know enough about Ohtani. We never really, he doesn't speak English. He doesn't really give many interviews. You just don't know is he a degenerate gambler? I would guess not and hope not. But there's too much here from the beginning that I think something's going to come out and change. And the worst thing, remember when baseball gave the cheating Astros, or all those players, they got immunity because they told the truth. Yeah, we cheated. Well, I don't know that that's going to happen with an Ohtani, but the biggest disaster for baseball is if this guy bet one game that he wasn't on, that's a year. I don't know how they're going to avoid that. But I'll say to you, if he bet games and he bet on the Angels to win, I don't think you're going to see him banned for life, because this guy is the number one ticket in baseball.
Well, yeah. And so the whole question that I've heard from people here, like, what's baseball going to do? Let me tell you something. If you are somebody that has knowledge that Ohtani bet on baseball and the top MLB brass knows about it, you'd have a better life expectancy if you were a Boeing whistleblower. That's all I can say. Look for some quote-unquote suicides to be happening here, fellas. Shades of Jeffrey Epstein, if anybody does have any evidence of this, and MLB finds out about it, because this is going to be death to the MLB business model, because they're building so much of their international expansion around him. And, again, the biggest star in baseball at this point, largely because, again, you got to grade on a curve. I mean, the biggest star in baseball today is not nearly akin to what it would have been decades ago when it would have been a major celebrity in American life. It would have been, like Travis Kelce decades ago, would have been a baseball player as far as the level of celebrity. Matter of fact, who was he stealing from other than, Joe DiMaggio with Marilyn Monroe, right? He's taken one right out of the playbook from there. But, today, the biggest celebrities are basketball and especially football players, but Ohtani's as big as it gets in the sport of baseball, and that takes me to, as we're looking at for the season here, going to start with the National League this time around, just because it's the natural point of segue from talking about Ohtani. So you had obviously the big spending spree that the Dodgers went on in the off season to try to basically make their October choke-proof here, which they haven't been able to do the last couple of years. And just to give you my general thoughts here on the National League, I would say, in looking at it, that, again, I do have the Dodgers coming out of the West. I do have Arizona as a wild card again, so that may not be a great October matchup for the Dodgers should they catch them again. In the Central, I've got Cincinnati winning the division. I think they may be they're a real sleeper team, I think, to make the World Series with the young talent that they have there. I've got the Cubs as a wild card. And then in the East, I've got Atlanta winning because I think they're still the team to beat there. I do think Philadelphia will make the playoffs again. And like I said with the Dodgers, the Braves might want to look out if they catch the Phillies again, because that hasn't been a very good October matchup the last couple of years for them. So I'll start with you, Ken. Thoughts on the National League? I know a lot of what I said is repetitious of what happened a year ago, albeit the Cubs just missed the playoffs. And my surprise, if there is one, would be the Reds making the playoffs and potentially going on a run. But what do you see, Ken, as far as where the National League might be different and similar to last year?
Well, I'm just going to start off. Well, I agree with you about the Dodgers winning their division at the top up there in Arizona, because the rest of these guys, my gracious, the Padres,
right,
the Giants, and the Rockies, please. But I found a new team because I've always disliked the Yankees immensely because they always win. Nothing personal, Steve. But
I don't know what century you're talking about. It's not this one.
Not recently.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. We can go centuries, decades, or whatever. But these guys are the new Darth Vader to me. I hope they fall on their face somehow, some way. And I'm probably going to be wrong as always. But So I'm taking the Dodgers with the Diamondbacks following up behind them. Also, it's an easy one for me again when I look at this mess we call the NL Central. I've got the Reds and I've got the Cubs. It sounds like we compared notes here, Rick. But the Cardinals have fallen out of Cardinal land. Although I'm a big fan of Murphy over there in Milwaukee when he was, I went to a lot of his seminars as a coach when he was the head coach at Notre Dame and then down in Arizona in the college game. And he's a pistol. He knows the game, and he really appealed to me. So, but he's not going anywhere this year either. And the Pirates are the Pirates. And then again, I've got Atlanta and the Phillies because, again, the Mets have fallen right on their face. The Marlins have some hope, but not much above 500 in my opinion. And then the Nationals are, again, please see the Pirates, the Rockies, the Giants, etc., for how they're going to finish.
Yep. And my picks, by the way, are up on the main page of FantasyDraftHelp.com. You can find Fantasy Baseball Draftology 2024. My picks are on page 19 there. So I know it's just a coincidence you and I are making the same ones, Ken. You're an independent-minded guy. You weren't going on there making crib notes off of my predictions. Let's just say great minds think alike. And let's see if the third great mind in our conversation sees things the same way in the National League here, Steve Kallas.
Well, I'm going to start with the Braves because I really like them and I like them to make a run. I will say this. I know we're going to pick playoff teams, but you know my complaint about last year, Rick and Ken. You really have to analyze why these wild card teams or secondary teams can go and, the Diamondbacks sweep the Dodgers, for example. Clayton Shaw, who to me has become the Peyton Manning of the greatest regular season players ever who are just not really good in the playoffs, gave up that six earned in the third of an inning, and he's out for a while. But I'm going Braves, but I'm worried. So if I say, for example, the Braves, and I'm picking the Phillies, of course, to be a wild card. If they play them again, will they beat them again? I don't know. Maybe they have their number, but they also have 4 days of rest. And I don't think that's a good thing when that team that comes in first has 4 or even 5 days of rest after the season. We always go back to Earl Weaver. This ain't football. Yep. We play this day. And when you play baseball, and you have 4 or 5 days off, no baseball, there's nothing you can do in practice to emulate a game. And I think that really hurt. Now, I don't know if you guys heard, but they went to Manfred and said, this is absurd. All the good teams got eliminated like in the first round. Or the record got eliminated in the first round. And he said, well, it's such a short sample we haven't seen. We'll have to wait. So that could happen again this year. And, if it does, he's going to have to do something. In the old days, old days, it was best of 3 and then the World Series started. The famous Bobby Thompson home run in 51 was in the third game of a 3-game playoff. And, of course, they were both playing to the Yankees, who were winning 5 in a row, when the Yankees really were the Yankees, Ken, because the Yankees haven't been the Yankees since, you tell me, 2002. They won one World Series.
When the Tribe was taking them on a few times. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I'm a little concerned about the picks, but certainly for the regular season, I'm going Braves with the Phillies as a wild card. I'm not going Mets. The Mets, I thought when they signed Verlander and Scherzer, I thought they had a chance to be a World Series team. I personally think Buck Showalter is a great manager. They get rid of him because the Stearns guy came in. And, yes, Diaz is coming back, but I just don't think they're that good. And I don't know how good Diaz is going to be after a year off. 2 years ago, as you guys remember, he was lights out, and then he jumps up to celebrate a win, nothing more than jumping up on the pitcher's mound, and lost the season. That baseball thing, I think, should be after the season. I don't think it should be a World Baseball Classic. We talked about it. It should be after the season. But I got Braves winning the East with the Phillies as a wild card. I've got the Cubs winning the West. They re-signed Bellinger, and I think that's huge, and I think they're pretty good. But one of the biggest reasons I'm picking them is because maybe you'll tell me it's money, but Craig Counsell going to manage the Cubs, coming over from the Brewers, I think that's a pretty big deal. Nothing against David Ross, but he was like a good player who became an announcer, who became a manager, almost in the Jeff Saturday mold. And I just think I think Counsell, wherever he goes, I know the Mets were supposedly after him, but they bringing in a rookie, Mendoza, to manage the Mets. I don't know what that means. He's going to do a better job than Buck Showalter? But whatever. I got the Cubs winning. So, again, the AL Central, which I know we'll get to, and the NL Central, it's almost like who are you going to pick, because you're not picking wild cards coming out of them. It's always the East and the West, no different this year. But in the West, I have one little surprise. I do have the Dodgers winning, and when we get to the playoffs, I'll tell you why the Dodgers, other than maybe this 4 or 5 day break, and frankly, Clayton Kershaw, who's now a .500 pitcher in the postseason with a 4.49 ERA, and by the way, is hurt and isn't coming back. I think they said till like July.
Right.
But they have a bomb squad, and they have one of the greatest. 1, 2, 3s of all time. We'll talk about them later, but I like the Dodgers, and I get the Diamondbacks a wild card, and Ken will be a little bit surprised, but I give the Giants a chance, just a chance to make the playoffs, and part of it is because my guy Blake Snell, and Rick, last year I was pitching for him to win the Cy Young because he started 1-5 with a 5.40 ERA, and then was the best pitcher in baseball by far, in June, July, August, and September. And the numbers that he put up are unbelievable, and I thought he deserved it. I understand what other people are saying, a lot of walks, not enough innings. He is a 5-inning pitcher now. He is a 5-inning pitcher, but here's a flash. That's acceptable in today's game. And we might not like it. I personally think they should give you a win now if you finish 4 innings, because there's no problem. In the old days, you guys will recall this, it's 4 2/3 innings, but you win in 7-0 and you give up 4 runs. They'd leave you in to try and get you that 5th inning to get the win. Now they're happy to pull you at 4 2/3, and every pitcher walks off the mound pissed off. All I got to do is get one more out. You're taking the win away from me. That doesn't fly anymore. Maybe it's analytics. I don't know. But I think getting Snell and Chapman, by the way, Matt Chapman, I think that gives them a chance to go over the hump. They signed Soler. He's hot and cold, but they got some different guys now. So I got Diamondbacks and Giants as a wild card with, again, like everybody, the Dodgers winning the but I want to get into the Dodgers pitching later when we get to the postseason.
Sure. And I think in looking at it here, that could be a very interesting race for the Cy Young between Snell and Spencer Strider. And depending on the number of years that Snell, he's bounced around with teams, but if he's in the National League for some period of time, that could be an interesting rivalry between them the next couple of years because health permitting, which is what you got to say for all of these guys, Spencer Strider's not going anywhere as far as that race goes. Yep. In looking at the American League, I'm going to start with the East and a team that I think is the new power in the division here, and going to go with the Baltimore Orioles to win the division. And I think the biggest concern that there had been, as far as, and not to kick any dirt on Peter Angelos' grave, but them selling the team to a really deep-pocketed entity is what makes me believe in them going forward. Because otherwise it's just another version of my hometown team where guys will get good and then get traded away or leave in free agency. Baltimore is not going to have that happen. By the way, on the day that we are actually taping this program here, just send our thoughts and prayers and our best wishes to Baltimore on the very bad tragedy of that bridge going down today. What a shocking thing for everybody to wake up to. With that was pretty horrific. But the Orioles, I think they're the power of the division. I think in looking at it, Toronto will make a wild card. I think Tampa Bay will come up just short. I think this is their year to just be in it, but come up short. I've got the Yankees and Boston back of that because I don't think, particularly when you're looking at Baltimore, I just don't think the traditional powers of that division begin to stack up to the amount of raw talent that's there. And a team that doesn't even need Holiday on the opening day roster, which just shows you how deep they are. In the Central, once again, I think it's Minnesota by default. I'm not a believer in anybody else in the division. My hometown team, the Tribe, again, what a pathetic starting lineup. Just absolute vomit as far as the starting lineup there. They're going to waste the very good pitching they have. It's one of the top rotations in the league, but who cares when you're losing 2-1 and 3-2 every night? So Minnesota by default is how I look at the Central. The West, I think, is going to be super competitive. I've got Texas just edging it out to win the division, because I do think down the stretch, I think getting back Max Scherzer and optimistically DeGrom, although as a fantasy owner of DeGrom the last 2 years, I would say you take nothing for granted, but potentially getting them back late in the year, I think, is going to be helpful. And by the way, a recent edition of the show that we did here, I had on a Dallas area media veteran, Dan McDowell, and was talking to that about him. We were talking about the similarities for Bruce Bochy, that he would win in San Francisco, and they'd be good-sized payrolls, but sometimes inefficient. Remember when he had the corpse of Barry Zito there? So it was funny that, like, he was having to rely on the younger guys to kind of get them across the finish line. And you're looking at Evan Carter, who's going to be stepping up for Texas this year. My guy in my keeper league, Wyatt Langford, making the roster here. So I think it's going to be more of the same for Bruce Bochy. He's got a huge payroll, but it may not be the guys making the most money that get them across the finish line. I have Houston and Seattle as wild card teams, and I think it's going to be a very, very wild three-way battle in that division, as it was for most of last year. That's going to be, to me, the most interesting division in baseball as far as three super, super legitimate teams going at it all year. So, Ken, I'll turn it over to you. What are you seeing when you look at the American League this year?
Okay. I think, well, the East is still, it's very interesting to me. The Orioles, I know, are the team to pick. They definitely, on paper, have the best lineup, the best depth, and all this other stuff. They're young. The only thing that could trip them up is if they get into the spotlight and they go,
right,
and just fall apart. But I'm looking at, and Steve, you're going to love this. I see as a real dark horse that's going to push them. And you know me, over the years, I'm never right. But I think the Yankees are really loaded for bear this year. And it just pains me to say that to no end. But and the Blue Jays, I don't quite get what they're doing over there exactly, but I still think they're loaded with talent. I also agree with the Rays. It's not their year. And the Sox, they're coming on. They have really improved themselves. But neither one of those guys are going to be there. And I'm moving on to the Central. We're trading poop for manure top to bottom as far as they all stink. As far as really going in there and getting into the playoffs. But somebody has to, so I'm not buying the Tigers. There's a lot of people on the Tigers bandwagon this year. I do like what the Royals are doing and putting together, but I don't think it's their year either. The Guardians, Rick, you summed that up. And the White Sox. They have a great team on paper, and then they always just fall on their face. So I don't know if that's going to be the case this year or not. Moving over to the West, I like the Astros. I still think they've got some, a couple more hurrahs in them. And the Rangers look good. But when is somebody going to sign Montgomery? Because he would be a great fit with him. Get back with the Rangers. I think he would put him over the top to where you were talking about, Rick. If he comes on board, if he doesn't come on board, let me phrase it that way. If he doesn't come on board, I think the Astros and the Rangers and even the Mariners are going to have a three-way battle. I keep waiting for the Mariners to just pop up, and start really showing what they're made of. So, Angels, Athletics, they're a ways away. So, that being said, in the wild cards, the three that I have picked out are the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Rangers.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, those are all very, very valid choices here. Obviously, looks like the Yankees are going to try and slug their way to a number of wins, particularly earlier in the season when with Garrett Cole being down. Sort of the anti-Indians, right, or Guardians, or whatever the hell you want to call them these days. But it's like if you took their hitting and the Tribe pitching, boy, you'd have a full team. But you've got basically half of a team in each place, especially without Garrett Cole in there for the Yankees for at least the first 2 months of the season. So, Steve Kallas, the American League, how do you see things shaking out in 2024?
I'm with you guys on the Orioles. I mean, you got to, they're so impressive, and they're only going to get better. I mean, that's the thing. They did the Tampa Bay thing where they had a bunch of number one picks forever.
Yep.
I'm not knocking them, but the biggest addition, as you guys probably know, is they got Corbin Burns.
Yep.
So last year, but a Cy Young Award winner before that, and they really needed a guy to step in with some experience to help these younger pitchers. Now this Kyle Bradish, who was 12-7 last year with a 2.83, he's got a UCL sprain, but they expect him back in May. And this John Means, who came up late and only had 4 starts with a 2.66 ERA, he's coming back the end of April. So a lot depends. This Grayson Rodriguez is young and talented. He has to get better, but they're really, really good. And you know who they have. You guys know Rutschman, the catcher, 20 homers, 80 RBIs. The gunner Henderson of the year, 28, 82 RBIs, 100 runs scored, a rookie. Santander, 28 homers, 95 RBIs. Ryan Mountcastle, 18 and 68. I like this Colton Wong pickup. Colton Wong, to me, has always been kind of a really nice player under the radar. Again, another experienced guy. But I think the scam they pulled, and you guys know, they also have Craig Kimbrell as their closer, which, 23 saves last year for Philly, but I don't know. I get scared when I see him pitch. But
sure.
They also have another righty, Cano, from last year. He had 8 saves, but he's young, but a 2.11 ERA. So I think they're going to be real good and only better. But the one thing I will talk about, which we've talked about in the past, this Jackson Holliday, who was the number 1 pick in the 2000 overall pick in the 2022 draft. Matt Holliday's kid, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that. He's like the next big thing in Major League Baseball, not just for the Orioles. Had a superb spring, and they sent him down because they're doing that. I don't know exactly the rule. You guys might. You keep him in the minors for 2 months or 3 months, and then you bring him up, and he doesn't get credit for the year. And so you hold him for an extra year, which is real BS. But it's been done before by other star players early on. So you were hoping, I was hoping they'd do the right thing, frankly, and let this guy start the season. But they're not doing that. But I still like the Orioles. I might be living in the past, fellas, but I'm picking the Rays and Yankees as wild cards coming out. I don't like the Red Sox at all. The Blue Jays are ultra-talented, but it's always but to me with the Blue Jays. But I don't know how the Rays are going to be real good, but they're always real good. As for the Yankees, look, losing Cole, are you going to rely on Rodon? Rodon might have been the biggest disappointment. 6 years, $162 million, I think, last year. He might have been the biggest bomb free agent signing, frankly, of them all. He was 3-8 with a 6.85 ERA last year in 14 starts. They give the ball to Nestor Cortez. Hey, nasty Nestor, if he's healthy, if he's right, absolutely. He's starting opening day, but he was 5-2 with a 4.97 ERA in 12 starts. Now, they got Marcus Stroman, but you probably also know Marcus Stroman, a talented guy, totally up and down, a little nutty. Don't have the dominant bullpen that I thought they might. Clay Holmes is up and down, but great when he's really good. 24 saves and 29 tries last year. But I think missing Cole is gigantic. And now I'm not sold on, he doesn't need Tommy John, hooray for us, but he's only going to miss 2 months? I don't know. So I'm a little scared they can sneak in. As for Soto, by the way, I know a couple of guys who know the Yankees real well, better than I do. And they said, well, nobody's really talking. We'll have to see if Soto can pull the ball because his real power alley is left center. And you guys know Yankee Stadium, left center is a death trap.
Whoops.
So we'll have to see. Now, I did watch him a little in spring training. He has pulled the ball. They might be, telling him you got to pull the ball if you want to hit 35, 40 homers, which he will if he can pull the ball. The house that Ruth built. Somebody told me, I don't know if you guys ever heard this, but somebody told me that the reason left out ever became a saying in American language is because when they opened Yankee Stadium, right field was short, Babe Ruth played right field, and if you were sitting in the left field stands, you were left out.
Oh, okay. Wow.
That's what I was told. I can't tell you I read it in a book, but if true, that's a great thing because you are left out if you were sitting in left field in Yankee Stadium when Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig were playing, that's for sure. But
I don't know. Old NBC promo, the more you know.
Well, look at you.
It might be anecdotal, I'm not sure, but I heard that somewhere, and I thought it was the coolest thing. Even if it's not true, it's actually pretty cool. But it almost makes sense because you say to little kids, where are you playing? They don't say, I'm playing left field or I'm playing outfield. They say I'm playing left out. And the ball, you know how that works.
That's
whatever.
Yeah.
The West, it sickens me to say this, as you guys always know, but I'm picking the Astros over the Rangers. I do have the Rangers making the wild card. I will say, well, I got Minnesota on Rick's analysis. Minnesota by default, Central.
Yeah.
And I'll say it again, for both Centrals, every year now it seems to be who are you picking? It's almost by default. But in the West, I have the Astros eking out, I hope I'm wrong, the Texas Rangers. And I will tell you, Rick, I thought the Mariners, and still think they have a good chance to make the playoffs, but I couldn't eliminate either the Yankees or the Rays. And if I had to eliminate one, frankly, I would have eliminated the Yankees. But I'm going Orioles, Twins, Astros, wild card, Yankees, Rays, Texas Rangers.
Well, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, Steve, but this is one of these deals where you look at it, and it's kind of funny because you go back about 50 years to some of the predominant teams of the time here. And Baltimore and Cincinnati were both riding high at about the same time and actually met in the 1970 World Series. So if there's a team in either one of those divisions that's going to break that whole deal in the next couple of years, I think it'll be the Reds, because they're reminding me an awful lot of what the Orioles have done as far as putting together that young core there. So I think the Reds have a chance to be an actual respectable division winner in the years to come, and not just the taller than Mickey Rooney award.
And, Rick, if I could ask you, is there any reason Joey Votto couldn't hang on there? Didn't he have a minor league contract with somebody else? He's trying to make the majors. Joey Votto, doesn't he deserve last man on the bench if that's what he wants on a team that's going to battle for a Central Division?
And that's the thing is, like, you could go either way on that. Like, what's more disrespectful to him to not offer him a contract or last man on the bench? Because, honestly, that's what he's got to be. They got to be getting the young guys reps here, because I think most of the guys in that core, you don't have to worry about any more minor league seasoning. I think they're all ready to go. So it's a thing where they might have looked at it. Now, then again, never assume these things, right? They should have asked him, like, hey, look, dude, you have a problem being here, being the 25th man? Because realistically, that's what you're going to be. We cannot afford to take at bats away from any of these other guys. So if it wouldn't have been disrespectful to him, then yes, I think they should have done that, and they should have kept him around, because they could have kept the continuity. It would have been much better all the way around if he would have gone for it, and I think he would have gone for it, Steve.
Well, I'll say it again. Hopefully, it sounds like – I think we'd know by now if they left it up to him and he said, no thanks, I'll go find somewhere else to play, and then we're all good with it. But if they just didn't even offer him a contract, I think it should be his choice. Maybe I'm a old-timer or whatever, nostalgic, but this guy is such a talented player who, frankly, in my mind, was lost in Cincinnati forever. And Mike Trout is much greater than Votto, but Votto's great, in my opinion. Mike Trout's another guy now. He lost without Shotani, he lost with Shotani, and now he's going to lose without Shotani again. I see some people picking him to come back and win the MVP. He's that talented, but then at the end of the year, we'll have my usual argument, which is if he wins the MVP, he won't be if he wins the MVP, he'll be the MOP. He'll be the best player in the league. He will not be the most valuable because the Angels are not going to be good again.
Yeah, he can't lift them to being more than they are. Ken, how do you see the thing shaking out here with Joey Votto? Would you agree that you offer him a chance to stick around as the last guy on the roster if he'd be willing to do it?
Yes, because he is Mr. Cincinnati Reds.
Yes.
At this point. And on our previous conversation, the three of us talking about Ohtani, if they let this thing slide, like Steve, you and I were talking, and Rick, then Votto and Rose can go in together into the Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah.
Because what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if you're going to let Ohtani, we're going to look the other way because times have changed. I'm sorry. Gambling's gambling, guys. So, that being said, I'm a big Rose fan, as it is. I'll get him in on his merits, not on the nonsense that everybody's talking about. But, yeah, I think Votto. Now, Votto is going to be what, with the Blue Jays, correct?
I think so, yeah. I think that was
find the He signed a minor league deal with them. I don't think he's on the opening roster, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard where he was once he signed. But, yeah, I mean, the guy deserves better. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And,
right.
And he's the kind of guy, from things I've seen of him and heard him, he just would lead the Reds, and he has for years. He's been the face of the Reds. So there's got to be some hurt feelings there, I would think, and maybe I'm wrong. So.
Well, and just knowing that he signed to a minor league deal with anybody, there's something wrong about that because, particularly some of the lesser teams in baseball, if they were to sign him. Now, the Blue Jays are not one of the lesser teams, but, one of the lesser teams could actually sign him and use him on at least a quasi-regular basis. But I hate to think of him ending his career this way. He should have been able to retire a Red. And even with their change in circumstance, that's one of those things where, again, they can't promise him regular playing time. But, again, I think he should have been allowed to get a spot there. Speaking of the Reds, I did kind of tease this before that I think that they can make some noise come October, not just win the division. I actually have them advancing to the League Championship Series, but I have the Dodgers over Philadelphia and then Cincinnati over Atlanta. I do have the Dodgers over Cincinnati in the League Championship Series. And in the American League, mirroring that, I talked about Baltimore with their young talent. Again, they flamed out against Texas early on last year. But again, you look at that, again, those quick series, those best-of-3 series can be over in the flash of an eye. Like, you fall down 7-0 early in Game 1, and you're probably going to get swept. And it just kind of felt like that one was over before it started. I read nothing into what they're going to do in the playoffs this year. And I actually have Baltimore over Houston in the League Championship Series this year. So I have it being a rematch of the 1966 World Series here between the Dodgers and Baltimore. And this time around, Dodgers over Baltimore in 6. I would like to see it go the other way for the reasons you guys are talking about here, with the Dodgers being Darth Vader and all of that. And I would say also, too, as a Catholic, after everything that went down last year with their mockery of nuns, all the more reason I'd like to see it go that way, but I don't see it going that way yet. This is a year for Baltimore just to kind of climb their way towards the top but come up just short. Steve Kallas, I know you said you have thoughts on the Dodgers and particularly how their pitching will play in the postseason.
Yeah, I'm in the neighborhood with you. I'll give you my final 4 because I don't know how they set up. And again, the disclaimer to me is always going to be, well, who plays really well in the first, series, and where you have the best teams in baseball waiting 4 or 5 days to play again. We maybe should do a early playoff thing as opposed to wait for the World Series, because I think it might be totally different when we see the matchups. And again, who got swept after resting 4 or 5 days last year? How, is that an accident? And if it happens again, I do think you might have to go back. I used to not like one game after 162 games to decide whether you're in the playoffs or not. But now, seeing what happened to the top teams last year, if that happens again this year, fellas, I think they should change it back to one game, because then you just miss, you line up your pitching and you only miss probably 2 days. They play the game on Monday or Tuesday, and they start everything on Wednesday. That should be an advantage for the winners with the best records, not a disadvantage. And certainly last year, I don't care what anyone says, that was a disadvantage. But I'm going in the East. I kind of agree with you totally on this. Again, much as it hurts me to say this, I have the Orioles beating the Astros to get to the World Series. I think the Orioles, they're going to be the dominant team for the next 5 years or 10 years in the East, I think. I'm worried about the Yankees pitching. They're asking so many people who weren't good last year to be good, or so many pitchers who weren't healthy last year to be healthy, and that's without, again, the Cy Young Award winner for the first 2 months. Do they have a bomb lineup? Yes. I'll point out something else not too many people will realize. But you guys heard about the Rizzo fiasco last year with the guy played 2 months and then they said he had a concussion. He looked like he didn't know where he was. He was horrific. Yeah. Now, supposedly, he's healthy and okay, so yes, they're going to have a wonderful lineup. But their pitching is not so great. But I'm still going Orioles to win the AL pennant. Remember the pennant? Do they still call it the pennant? Just checking.
I do.
I have them beating the Astros. Much as it hurts me to pick the Astros to do anything, I'll be more than happy if they get swept in the first round or whatever. And then in the East, and here's my concern with the Dodgers. In the East, I have the Braves beating the Dodgers, and here's why. So, Kershaw, who, again, was a great regular season pitcher last year, 13-5, and then had a disastrous playoff game, maybe the worst of his career, and that's saying a lot. He's just not that good in the postseason for whatever reason. I don't know. But I think he's 13-13 or 14-14 with a 4.49 ERA. The Dodgers have really underachieved. The fact that they've only won once strikes me as ridiculous. But let's go down without Kershaw, who is on the 60 DL for surgery injury. He's expected back in July, maybe August. So he might be the guy they need down the stretch if it's close. I don't know that it's going to be close because their lineup, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, if they're 1, 2, 3, and I think they are, that might be one of the greatest 1, 2, 3 punches ever. I don't know if they'd be the greatest, but they've got to be right up there. But in any event, the biggest disappointment of the year might be this Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Now, it's too early, but he got rocked in his last 2 preseason starts, and he didn't finish. He pitched 1 inning. Now, again, you're playing in Japan, so I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. But he gave up 5 earned runs in the first inning. They took him out of the game in that 15-12 slugfest, whatever game 2 was. And they're relying on him to be the man now. Now, Tyler Glasnow, really good. 10-7 last year, 3.53 ERA, comes to the Dodgers. But he's another guy who pitches, 150 innings maybe. And so immensely talented. But these other guys, James Paxton, okay. Emmett Sheehan, okay. Bobby Miller, 11-4 last year, 3.76 with the Rays. So you got to figure he'll be good with the Dodger lineup as opposed to the Rays lineup, which is good, not great. And then, they got a good closer, Evan Phillips, 24 saves last year, 2.05 ERA. They've got a pretty good bullpen, but the offense is going to carry them. I mean, we talk about Betts, Ohtani, and Freeman. They got, Muncy, 36 homers, 105 RBIs. The catcher, Will Smith, 19-76. So they also signed Teoscar Hernandez, Kiki Hernandez, 2 really good players. So they're loaded everywhere to me, but they're starting pitching. If this guy Yamamoto is a bust, you can't call him a bust after 2 preseason terrible starts and 1 real season terrible start. But people are now questioning, they gave him $325 million. So is that a $325 million mistake? Well, give me half a year and we'll know better. But I think they're in trouble with the pitching, and that's why I've got the Braves beating the Dodgers and then the Braves beating the Orioles in 6 for the World Series. Although the Braves are starting to look like the Dodgers, or the Dodgers are starting to look like the Braves. What they win, 14 AL East when they were in the AL East. They won like 14 in a row, and they won 1 World Series. As great as they were, to me, the Dodgers are looking like that, and you can argue that team is better than those Braves teams.
Yeah, and kindly don't remind me and Ken who that was that they beat for their lone World Series title, because that is a sore spot on America's North Coast.
I was just going to hang up on you, Steve.
Yeah, please don't, but because we need to get your picks, Ken, for how you see the World Series shaking out this year. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I just for the record, I'm just going to say this. I'm not a conformist at all, but what I'm about to say is going to paint me in a different light. So, at any rate, I've got the Braves playing the Dodgers. Just like Steve, I didn't know what brackets they were going to come out of or anything like that. But the Braves against the Dodgers, and I have the Dodgers going to the World Series because I think they bought themselves a World Series, so to speak. And teams have done that in the past. So, in the American League, I've got the Orioles playing the Astros, much to my dismay. However, I've got the Orioles coming out. As you said, Rick, was 1966. I've got the Orioles playing the Dodgers, and the Dodgers winning it because I don't think the Orioles, I think they're still wet behind the ears, so to speak.
Yes.
If they even say that anymore. But,
they do.
Okay. So,
all the kids are saying it, Ken. Trust me.
Oh, are they? I'm just hearing about from my kids who are now older. I'm hearing the word bougie and stuff. I'm like, what in the hell is that?
Yes.
but
Oh, yeah.
at any rate, there I digress.
All right, so you've got Baltimore making the World Series. So none of us then see them coming up with the World Series title this year, but it's interesting that we all see it that way as far as them winning the American League because, and again, being able to come out of the East, that's a little bit better of a launch pad, I would say, to the World Series than the West because particularly if you think Texas or Houston has a real good chance, they got to go through each other in that division. So maybe that has something to do with it, although I know, again, all of us kind of, really, really, really are just in awe of the young talent that Baltimore has there and what they continue to build. And, again, with Holiday, there's more on the way still. So, but as we bring this thing all the way around here tonight on our combination Don Koster tribute and 2024 MLB preview, just get some more thoughts from both of you gentlemen in closing here. I'll start with you, Ken.
Well, I go back to my days when I wore the Little League uniform on 2 hours before our game, and the 28th is when the season, in my opinion, really starts, and I can't wait because as much as we go through this and try to figure this out and figure that out like everybody else, you don't know, and that's the fun of it for me. It's going to be fun watching the Reds and the Orioles start moving up the ladder and kicking down some of the past or more recent winners and teams that were in the playoffs year after year after year. They're bumping them out of the way. And let's hope there's a couple more because I like that variety. And I see that's coming down the road. There were a couple teams here. And one of them, I still have a question mark about the Padres. Because they seem to be doing stuff. So, I mean, there's teams I could pick out ad nauseum and then kind of pull for them during the season. So it's a long year. So.
Yeah, but you're right. It's going to be great to have it back here and be able to see how these things play out. There, pundits like us can kind of toss around scenarios, but we get to see them play out starting this weekend here from when we're taping this. Steve, any more thoughts from you on tonight's show?
Well, I will point out, I do give Major League Baseball credit for these changes. I thought the clock here and the clock there and all this other stuff was not ridiculous, but I didn't know if it would work. But it does seem to have worked to a point, and I think that's good. You know what I've always said, just take out 1 minute of commercials between innings and you'll have a shorter game by 18 minutes guaranteed. And if you tell me 1 minute,
happen, right?
right. Take out 30 seconds and you'll have 9 minutes. But yes, you're right. That'll never happen. I'm, as always, living in the past when there probably was. Well, the Yankees used to start games in the 20s and 30s at 3 p.m. with no light.
Sure.
Yeah. And so, if you want to laugh, go back and look at these early World Series games. They take an hour and 52 minutes. You go, how could that be? But, it's a different world and a different game now. I'm a little disappointed in this new moving, and you can call me old, but it's with bat flips and everything. Now this is like everybody seems to wrap their arms around bat flips, and they're very cool with it. I always go back to Mickey Mantle. The guy hit a home run. He used to jog around with his head down. They asked him why. He said, well, I've just embarrassed the pitcher by hitting a home run off him. I don't want to embarrass him anymore. That's right. Incredible. In football, you got to go back. I want football players to see Barry Sanders, the great Barry Sanders, hand the ball to the referee after he scores a touchdown. Whatever happened to, act like you've been there before.
Right.
Every NBA player, they hit a three. I'm like, yeah, I know you hit a three. You got to put 3 fingers up. I know you hit a three. Good for you.
Yeah.
And it's just such a totally different world. But bat flips, imagine Gibson, Koufax, imagine bat flips. There's that old story. I'm pretty sure it was Koufax, actually. That Lou Brock got a bunt hit off him, and the next time up, Koufax broke his arm. I'm guessing Lou Brock didn't bunt on him again. I'm not saying throw it, guys, but you know what I'm saying. And respect for the game, the respect for the game under the let's have fun. A cool bat flip is let's have fun. You throw the bat 8 feet in the air and you look at it, or you sit and stare at your home runs and then take 17 seconds to jog around the bases. Again, I'm an old timer. I'm glad they have shortened the games a little. It does make it more bearable because even I get bored sometimes watching 3.5-hour games, even if you tell me they're good games. The one other thing I wanted to say, it was so interesting to me, and I don't know that anybody wrote it, but I just happened to be up at 5:30 for that first game of the Major League Baseball season, Padres and Dodgers in Japan, I think, right? And so I'm up at 5:30, and the first batter, and again, tell me if you read this anywhere because I didn't. I mean, I'm not going to write an article about it, but the first batter of the 2024 baseball season, with a count of 3-1, got to first base because the pitcher was 1 second behind that pitch clock.
Okay.
The first batter was walked, and in something you hardly ever see, and I can think of maybe once or twice in my whole life. I'm sure it's happened more, but in that inning, so it was Mookie Betts who got the walk, and like 2 batters later, he steals second. They send him back to first, and the announcers don't know. We don't know what happened. We don't know why. We'll have to find out. We don't know why. The inning finally ends, and when they come back, they show the replay, and the home plate umpire called umpire interference on himself because when the catcher went back to throw, he hit the ump in the mask. How about that?
Okay.
You don't really see that. So that happened. No. Both of them to the first batter in the season this year. So I'm sitting there at 5:45 in the morning going, ooh, is this going to be a weird season or what? And then you guys had to have another play where the big play in the 8th inning that might have cost the Padres the game was the I forget who it was, but the Padres' first baseman made a nice diving leap to catch either a one-hopper or a line drive between first and second. The ball went right through his glove because the webbing broke. First game of the year, his webbing broke, and that led to the Dodgers winning the game, by the way. So I don't know. It was just kind of a weird game,
right?
And you'll see that very often, where a guy goes to first on the walk on a 3-1 pitch and steals second but gets put back to first because of umpire interference. And the game is partly decided because the line driver or one hopper went through the first baseman's, and you know the gloves they have are different, but went right through his webbing for a base hit.
Right. Wow, that is an awful lot of weird stuff. And again, so you were among the 3 people in America who got up to watch the MLB opener at 6 a.m. Eastern time. So congratulations. All right.
Sleeping is not my forte as I get older, and I'm told that's a very bad thing. But we'll see.
Well, you weren't left out.
I will say this, by the way. One last note to bring it around on the notion of modern celebrations in sport. I would like to think whatever our attitudes are, and the 3 of us are probably broadly similar in a lot of ways, I would like to think that there's anybody out there that would condone any of Donovan Mitchell's celebrations whenever Sam Merrill hits a 3. Like Donovan Mitchell skipping up the court, shoot that into my veins, please. I'll take any Donovan Mitchell celebrating with Sam Merrill. I'll take that every day of the week and twice on Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. So some of these other things with bat flips, you can keep them. But I like to still keep Spida's celebrations for Slingin' Sammy, as I'm trying to get him known here on America's North Coast. But anyways, gentlemen, thank you both so much for being a part of this here. Our great tribute yet again to our beloved friend and broadcast colleague, Don Koster, as we do this for the 7th time here. Always a staple of our MLB season opening show. So thank you very much, Ken Detwiler. Thank you very much, Steve Kallas. And thank you, everybody, for checking out FDH Lounge mini episode 1719.